George Lockhart is a name you may not have heard of, but you have surely heard of the fighters he has worked with, and you have also seen his work in front of you. You have seen the fruits of his labor in front of you. A man who may be behind the scenes, but does tremendous work for a lot of the biggest names in this sport, and he joins us right now via the phone. George, how are you?
Good. Hey, how you doing, Ariel?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining us. We could call you a lot of things. You are a former Marine. You are a fighter. You fought not that long ago. You are a nutritionist. You're a trainer. What else are you?
I'm a gym owner. It's one of my specialties. I'm a father, Christian. So I got a plethora of things that I like to claim and try to live up to.
So you work closely with some of the biggest names in the sport. Off the top of my head, John Jones, Kenny Florian, Rory McDonald, Dustin Poirier. You're currently working with Cris Cyborg. We will get to her in a second. But as someone who works with these guys and girls and you're there every day, you're in the gym, you're in the locker room, how big, and we've been talking about this all show long, how big of a problem is the PED problem in MMA?
I think it's huge. And I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding when it comes to PEDs. It's a tough sport. A lot of people think it's all about, aesthetics and, like some people are like, wow, I can't believe that guy is on steroids. Doesn't even look like he's on steroids. Recovery is such a huge aspect of the sport. When you're doing 2 and 3 days and you're getting punched and kicked and doing all these things, recovery is imperative. And, one of the reasons I got into this and one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about nutrition is because there was no way as a fighter I could possibly hang without proper nutrition, without that proper recovery. Me and Brian Stan, we go way back, and that was one of the biggest things. That's one thing I loved about him. It's one thing we never had to worry about with him was PEDs. And he's like, George, what do I need to do for recovery? And, I said, your nutrition's got to be on point. And I think a lot of people just don't understand how to do it properly and how much it can affect their lives and their training.
So you're working with Cris Cyborg in preparation for her fight on February 27th against Charmaine Tweed for the Invicta 145-pound title. Is this your first time working with her?
Yes, sir. Yes. We just started working together a couple weeks ago.
How did that relationship come about?
There was actually Brian Stan talked to her manager. It's a pretty tight-knit group. He was looking around for somebody just kind of take a look at her nutrition and see if we can improve on some things. And I got a hold of her manager, and we've been working it out ever since.
And, of course, she does have a history with PED use. She did fail a drug test while in Strikeforce. Did you have any reservations about working with her?
No. It's one of those things that, in the sport, there's a dark side. I'm not judging anybody. But it's very clear that it's not happening anymore. Anybody that I work with, that's something that I'm very, passionate about that, like I said, I keep bringing him up. He's a dear friend, but Brian, it's a big thing in the sport. I think it's a big reason that he got out of the sport, and it is an unfair advantage, and people can get hurt because of the power and the things that can come about from the PEDs. So anybody I work with, yes, that's very important that they don't do that. If that was the case, then I wouldn't be working with her.
Do you have a conversation with your fighter before? I mean, I don't want to just pin it all on Cyborg here, but that's the new client of yours. But you have a conversation. Look, you need to know everything that's going on. You need to know who they're talking to, what they're putting in their body, because at the end of the day, if a fight happens and you work with that fighter, and then after the fact it comes out that they failed the test, I mean, that's on you as well. You may have not known a single thing about it, but that's your reputation that gets hit, right?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right when it comes to talking, with the fighters. A lot of people are just like, well, it's nutrition. And with some people, you tell them what to eat, how to eat, and what to eat, or when to eat. But, when working personally with a fighter, I need to know everything about it. There's got to be a trust bond in there because there's so much psychology that goes along with it as well. They just got to be, okay, man, I'm gonna do what you tell me to do, and I'm gonna have 100% faith. And on my side, if they are taking PEDs, the nutrition is kind of like a shot in the dark.
Sure.
It really is. They'll be needing more calories. And it's funny, when you get down to the science, you can tell you can tell right away. You're like, okay, man, you're on something. You know what I mean? Because they're not getting the macronutrients that they need.
Has it ever happened? I'm not asking you to name names, but has it ever happened where midway through the camp you realize that something is off here and you call the fighter out and it comes out that they were doing something behind your back?
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
That's a tough. And what do you do at that point?
You tell them, like, I just need you to be, completely honest with me. Like I said, I don't judge. You know what I mean? Like I've been blessed, being in the military. Never had to provide for my family through fighting. You know what I'm saying? And with that being said, like you said, my reputation's on the line, and because of my family, I can't work with somebody that's doing that. But I'm not going to be like, well, so and so is doing X, Y, and Z. But I can't do my job unless I know 100% of the facts.
So when I hear that you're working with Cyborg, I mean, this fight is at 145. She's had a pretty easy time making 145. I know she's been out for quite some time, but is this the beginning of her move down to 135? Because, we've heard recently that the UFC is interested in her, that there have been talks. Lorenzo Fertitta has talked to ESPN.com about this, and that's the fight. I mean, this fight is taking place the night before the Ronda Rousey fight in Los Angeles. Are you working with her not really so much for this fight, but for the eventual move down to 135?
No, right now I'm working for this fight, specifically for this fight. I'm finding out how her body, works, how it functions. I came out here and actually met her for the very first time, kind of see her structure, how she's built, her training. And when it comes down to it, man, I can, the question is, can she make 135? I can make anybody hit any weight. It's the question isn't can they hit the weight, it's how they perform when they do. And right now that's not a big thought in the mind. Like I said, right now the tweet fight is the only thing that I'm thinking about. If the camp ever came to me and said, hey, we want to look at 135, it will be beneficial to me that I have worked with her before.
Yeah.
To do that.
So you've been working with her, you said 2 weeks, right?
Yes, sir.
How much did she weigh when you started this camp with her?
I believe she was in the high 60s.
Did you say 50s or 60s?
60s.
60s. So do you think it would be a problem to get down to 135 and still compete like we know Cyborg can compete?
Just starting to work with her, I can't tell that.
Okay.
Working with her a little bit more, I think that it'll definitely shed some light. Because one of the things that Cyborg is so, she's known for is being explosive, being powerful. And one thing that would have to happen would be, maybe we'd have to restructure kind of like the muscle and, what muscle we'd hold on to and what muscle we'd have to let go if it ever came down the pipe.
Last week on this show, we had Mike Dolce on talking about Kelvin Gastelum and John Lineker. And, as you know, I was saying at the beginning of this interview that you may not be the quote-unquote household name that Dolce is, and there are a lot of factors for that. I mean, he's, linked with the UFC Fit, and we see him with a lot of high-profile athletes. But do you ever sit back and say, why don't I get this kind of attention? Why don't I get this press? I mean, he's been on my show 5-6 times. It's your first time on the show. Why don't I get that kind of respect in the MMA community? Does that bother you? And do you ever sit back and try to wonder the reasons for that?
No, not at all. One thing that I'm a nutrition nerd. Anybody that talks to me, they'll know that. And it's funny because a lot of my buddies that got out of the military were not really self-promoting people. And I think that's one thing. Dolce is very good. He's a very good marketer. I give him props for that, man. He's very charismatic. He's a good talker. And everything that he's gotten, all that publicity, he's earned it. And that's something that I'm trying to get out because, my whole purpose behind my company is to help as many fighters as possible. That's why we created a system that we can mass produce. Like we work with hundreds of fighters at the same time, just because they're on the system. You know what I mean? So now I've got to get something I got to get good at. I got to get better at marketing and get my name out there.
Is that company Fitness VT?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What is Fitness VT?
Fitness VT is something that I worked on while I was in the Marine Corps. It's an actual program that we give the fighters. It is very, very, very specific to each individual person. For instance, if somebody wakes up at 6 or somebody wakes up at 7, they get a different nutrition plan every single day. If they work out at 10 o'clock versus 11 o'clock. They have a different nutrition program. It tells you what to eat, when to eat, how much of it to eat based on your goals. If you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, if you're trying to cut weight, be a specific weight. And the cool thing is there's so many algorithms that it finds out what foods work with your body. And then based on that, it'll change macronutrients around. It might increase them, it might decrease them. And then the funny thing is, like, a lot of people don't realize how much science went into it. You know, we balance, you know, macronutrients, micronutrients, you know, how much calcium, magnesium, so a fighter can have that pop or have his muscles relax. You know, too much calcium, your muscles they'll contract and they'll pop, but then they'll get tired. You need an equal amount of magnesium. Inflammation for fighters, omega-3 versus omega-6. We got perfect ratios in there. And, you know, it's not just for fighters. It's you know, health. You know, health is a primary, one of the three-legged stools we talk about: performance, aesthetics, and health. So, you know, it's cool because, like I said, we work with hundreds of fighters at the same time, and I think that's the difference between us and Mike. We have a totally different, I guess, marketing plan. You know, he works with I think 5 people at a time. And what we're able to do is mass produce that and work with hundreds.
Do you work with any non-MMA fighters?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I worked with the Ohio State wrestling team there for a minute. They sent me down to the dual nationals, and I got to work with the wrestling team. I also work with non-athletes, you know, business people that are like, hey, man, I need to lose weight. And that's one of my biggest passions. I love it. You know, going over nutrition, one of the biggest things, I'm actually writing a couple of books right now. One of them is the Weight Cut Bible, and the other one's the Psychology of Nutrition. And with a lot of people, they don't realize it's habits. You know, the word diet means food you eat in a habitual way, and we have to create these habits. But what we try and do is we try to fight the struggle instead of removing the struggle. So over the past couple of years, I'm trying to show what I learned in the Marine Corps, the mentality that I learned in the Marine Corps, and trying to implement that with the everyday person.
So I feel like every pro athlete, high-level athlete, needs the proper nutrition. I mean, if you're going to play in the NBA, if you're going to be one of the best in the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, etc., you need to treat your body. I've heard you say this, you know, like a Lamborghini. You can't put crap in that body. You have to do things the right way. But in fighting, unlike all these other sports and sports leagues, I mean, you actually have to cut weight. You have to make a certain weight before your fight, and that is a struggle in itself. Do you feel like most fighters, let's just say in the UFC, because it is the NFL of MMA, have no clue what they're doing and are harming their bodies before the actual fights?
Yes, I 100%. And it was shocking when I first started how badly or how old school this sport has grown so much. I mean, it is like the techniques, the striking, the ground, everything has evolved so much. But the weight cut practices are still primitive. And, you know, and it's like that in most weight sports, like wrestling. Still, like I was shocked. I'm like, wow, I can't believe people still do this. It's just like they put the sweats on, they put the they run into the sauna, or they just keep running until they hit weight or don't hit weight. You know, I think that people need to be educated on this, and a lot of people they go back to, you know, nutritionists and dietitians, but there's no school for weight cutting. If you go to anybody, they will say, you know, any nutritionist or dietitian, it goes against just not everything that they're taught. It's a totally new science, and I think we got to get it out there.
So, you know, last week we saw John Lineker and Kelvin Gastelum miss weight. You know, this is not news. This happens all the time in the sport. It's a part of the sport. But I'm wondering, you know, when we've seen some pretty tragic things happen outside of the UFC, thankfully, I mean, you don't want to see it happen to anyone anywhere, but, you know, that's where all the attention is. And part of me kind of feels like the same way a ref is provided, you know, to officiate a contest, and there are, you know, judges, and there are people outside who are, you know, cleaning up the fight or putting the Vaseline on, all that stuff as they enter the cage. Should someone like yourself, a trained professional, be provided maybe by the promoter or by the commission to help these fighters cut the weight? Because that, to me, it's not so much, I mean, it is a strategy and it's part of the fight. It's the fight before the fight. But this is, I mean, I feel like these guys are, and women are harming their bodies, and something might happen here. I mean, we've heard guys collapsing, being sent to the hospital, and then fighting the next day. It makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Do you think that your services, because let's be honest, some of these young guys, they can't afford, someone like yourself. That's just the nature of the sport. Should you be provided by either the commission or the promoter?
I would love that. There's so many things that are coming out about, brain injuries over the course of a career, and there haven't been a lot of studies that are being done on this weight cut. It's still, it's still new in this sport. Like what happens down the road? What are the effects that this will have later on in life? And I seriously, like the things that some of these guys are doing to make weight, I have a feeling it's cutting years off of their career, it's cutting years off of their life. When you're talking about price, I'm not marketing here or anything, but
Sure.
like even the amateur, we built this system for everybody, so amateurs can do it. I mean, the amount that we charge on there, it's like $350 for an entire weight cut, man.
Wow.
Yeah, man, and you're taken care of. If you want to personally work with me as a nutritionist, it's $99 a month, and for basic, it's $17. So if you are an amateur and you're not willing to put that kind of money on the table, there's
You shouldn't be doing this.
Some problems there.
Yeah. I had no idea it was that cheap. So if they go to fitnessvt.com, and again, I'm not here to, I get no cut in this. I just don't want to see guys missing weight. I don't want to see guys go to the hospital. It's kind of a downtime right now after such a great month for the sport with what happened to Anderson Silva and this news that continues to come out. I don't want to see it happen anymore. So fitnessvt.com, that's where anyone from the greatest fighter in the world to Joe Schmo can go to learn and contact you, right?
Yes, sir, man. That's it, boss.
All right, well,
like I said, we can mass do it, man.
I wish you all the best with Cyborg. You're doing great work. Guys like Brian Stan, who I have the utmost respect for. I mean, you can't have more respect, in my opinion, for an individual like I have for that guy. When he vouches for you and says that you're the man, then you are the man in my book. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and all the best with Cyborg and all your clients and your company, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, boss. You take care.
My pleasure. There he is, George Lockhart, stopping by. Fitnessvt.com is the website. I had no idea it was that cheap, to be honest with you. That is pretty amazing stuff. Really no excuse at that point.